And I think this is a pre-internet way to think. Because now people finish a book at midnight and they're like, "Hey, Ms. Rowell, I hate you. Why did you do that to me?" They'll be like, "I'm sorry," and they're like, "Oh, right, sorry. I didn't know you were going to answer." But I just never. I know Judy Blume is still like a vibrant, living person, but when I read her books, I never was like, Judy Blume is a human being who I could talk to someday. I really thought that authors are like magicians. Or I never thought that I felt that books were just artifacts and I couldn't connect them to living people. So I certainly never thought of myself as an author. I mean, I really just never thought, to me that would have been like saying, I'm a wizard, or I'm gonna be an astronaut, or I'm gonna, something that seems so out of reach. I guess astronauts must think they're gonna be an astronaut, but again, that seemed very far away and not possible to me. I started writing novels with my first book, Attachments, because I was a newspaper columnist. So I was did somebody say woo? A lot of newspaper people in the house. Woo! That's all they could afford to do was woo. Woo! Feed me! It's a very destitute life that I led. Newspaper columnist. Okay, for 10 years I was a newspaper columnist, which I did enjoy quite a bit. But when you work in a newspaper, I at least was edited a lot. I worked at a very conservative newspaper in a very conservative state. Nebraska is a very conservative state. And I think my jokes made people nervous. So whenever there was a joke in my column, all of my editors would have to say yes. And there's not a joke that you can tell 6 people and they all find funny. And especially these 6 people. So I was so beaten down, and my friend who is a playwright, we just were getting to know each other, and he was like, "Oh, you're a writer, I'm a writer too." And he said, "What do you write for fun?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" "I write for the newspaper. Haven't you seen my picture in the paper 3 times a week? And every other Sunday." And he said, "No, I mean, like, what do you write for yourself?" And I thought, I was offended. I thought, do you go up to plumbers and ask them, like, "Hey, dude, what are you plumbing for yourself these days? Are you doing any, soul plumbing? Just for you, for this guy?" So I was like, I don't write for myself. I write to pay the rent, barely. Like, what are you talking about? But it really, his question really got to me. It made me think about how I'd only ever written anything that was assigned to me. This is absolutely true. I was not, how some people journal, some writers are like, "Oh, I kept journals, I wrote poetry." I didn't do anything that I didn't have to do. So I wrote homework, and then I wrote for my job, and along the way I wrote love letters to boys that they sometimes read, So I thought, I'm gonna try to write something for myself. So I wrote Attachments, and my rule for Attachments was, if I ever heard that voice in my head saying, "Oh, is this funny?" I'd be like, that joke is staying. I was gonna override all those, editorial voices who were telling me that my jokes weren't funny. So if I thought a joke was funny in Attachments, then it stayed. It was locked in. And I really worked on it for, 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. I kind of took a break when my son was born. And so even then, I wasn't thinking, oh, and then I'm going to be an author someday, and this is going to get published. In fact, when I finished, I thought I was done. It just occurred to me I could move this instead of slouching. I think I could even, can I? I'm free. I can walk over here and do inadvisable things on my skirt. So I wrote Attachments, and I thought I was done. I remember saying to my husband, most people never finish a book. And I finished a book. So I've done that, and now I can move on to some other accomplishment. He was like, "Oh no, you have to send that out. We didn't all make sacrifices for 5 years so that you could write this book that now nobody's gonna read." So he talked me into sending it out and getting an agent, and that really made kind of everything seem possible to me. It was a very long process. I had a hard time querying agents. Do you know are any of you writers? I bet you are. Yeah, if you try to get an agent, it's like asking someone to prom, over and over, and knowing that 90% of them are gonna say no. And then sometimes they write you notes that are worse than no. You're like, "No, because." "No, because I didn't believe it," or "No, because your characters are flat." So when I got Attachments published, it was almost like a light came on in my head, and it didn't come on until after it was published. Oh, wait a minute. I can write a book. And if I can write one book, it's not a sure thing, but it's possible I could write two. I'm gonna try to do this again. So that's kind of how I came to becoming a novelist. And that's about the edge of me being able to stand here without hearing from you. So if we can start asking questions, and I'm gonna ask you not to video me, because if I see that someone has their phone up, I'll start being very careful.